My name, as all of you know, is Nadia Milleron, and I'm an independent, unaffiliated, running for U.S. Congress from Sheffield, Massachusetts. A lot of you know my story, but I'm going to run through parts of it really quickly because it's so important to understand what I think is possible. Our daughter died 5 years ago in a Boeing plane that was new, and it was defective both in its design and its production. The plane was the second plane to crash of a Boeing 737 MAX in Ethiopia. 4.5 months earlier, a similar Boeing plane had crashed in Indonesia. When I heard about the Indonesian plane crash, I thought, poor people. And I thought, it must be inferior pilots, and that was what I got from the news story. Then when Samya's plane crashed, it became pretty clear that it wasn't the pilots. We just wanted to stop. We had the funeral at our church in Twin Lakes, Connecticut, and then we came into this building and we had a memorial reception for Samya, in which we used that wall over there and just put all the pictures that she had in her computer. There were so many people in here, over 300 people, that we couldn't even move. I saw my mom 20 feet away and I couldn't get to her. There were people that came from all over the world, from Africa, from Denmark, from Canada. There were so many people parked in the field that they all got stuck in the mud. 15, it was right around now, so the funeral was March 26th, so mud season. So we're rising up from that point. We're rising up in the same place where we celebrated our daughter's life, and that is what is important, is her life. We just wanted to disappear after that. We stayed in the house, we cried on the couch, we cried in the bed, we didn't want to go out, we didn't want to have any press interviews. Oh, Ralph Nader's niece was killed in a Boeing defective plane, want to interview. We didn't want to be interviewed by anybody. Until April, and friends called us and they said, you've got to get off the couch. You have to go to Washington. They're going to put the plane back in the air. And what it meant to us is that meant there was going to be a third crash because they didn't fix what was wrong with the plane. And so we couldn't stand it. We couldn't stand that another 150 to 200 families would be grieving their loved ones, that all of those young people, all of those humanitarians would be erased from the world. More people. So we got off the couch and we went to Washington. And we dealt with the regulatory side of this issue. We went to the FAA. We met with the NTSB. We went to the Department of Transportation. And we said, look, you have got to face this. You've got to face the problems, the systemic problems, and the lack of oversight that have caused this accident to happen, this crash to happen. And then we went to Congress, and we went to every single office that had to do with transportation in Congress, in the Senate and in the House. And sometimes I couldn't see. I was crying so hard. And the guards in the buildings were worried about me. But I didn't care. I kept going because I didn't want other people to die from the same reason that our daughter died. And we kept having demonstrations in front of the Department of Transportation. And many families came from abroad because we're only 5 American families that lost loved ones on that plane. And there were hearings, and Dennis Muhlenberg was interrogated by the House, and then he was interrogated by the Senate, and I confronted him in the Senate because he wouldn't turn and look at the victims. He wouldn't say he was sorry. So then when I confronted him, he said, sorry. So we then attacked on the civil litigation side. We're looking for accountability from Boeing executives, from the people that caused this crash. We want them to be accountable for their actions. In the United States, we don't have registered aviation engineers working for Boeing. They work in groups, so there's no knowledge about who did what. That's crazy. In Europe and Canada, they have an aviation engineer has to sign off on their work. They put their name on it. And our son is a maritime engineer, and he has to put his name on everything on the ship. He has to take personal accountability. If he does things wrong, he'll lose his license, he'll lose his job. And that's the way it should be. People should have personal accountability. But in the aviation industry and also in the auto industry, there's this shield of the group. So we are still involved with all of those efforts, the civil litigation, the legislative effort. We helped pass the Aviation Safety Act, and then Boeing tried to roll it back, and Boeing has tried to get exemptions. Can you imagine, like, the access they have compared to us? Like, in the hearing, I'm watching Boeing come out with the representatives from behind, a place that I'm not allowed to go. So we also are attacking on the criminal side. We raised our hands to the Department of Justice and said, we are victims. Under the Crime Victims' Rights Act, you have to tell us what you're doing. What kind of negotiations are you having with Boeing? The Department of Justice lied and said, we aren't investigating Boeing. So we gave them the newspaper articles. Look, all the newspaper articles that say you are investigating Boeing. Oh, no, we're not investigating Boeing. But when we do, we'll let you know. And then that was a year later, so that was January of 2020 that we sent them those emails and made those calls. And then in January of 2021, right on the day of the insurrection in Congress, Trump administration made a deal with Boeing. And they used a technique which allows teenagers to rehabilitate themselves. So it's called a deferred prosecution agreement. So a teenager maybe should have 3 years to figure out why they did something wrong and get on a better track or whatever. They're using this for corporations now. So they made a deferred prosecution. You behave well for 3 years, Boeing. But the thing is, Boeing isn't behaving well. And we kept going to the court and saying, we're victims. We litigated for 1.5 years before the court said we were victims. And then we had to keep going and saying, look what Boeing's doing. And they said, oh no, but the terms are very narrow. The terms of the agreement are very narrow, so your complaint doesn't fit within it until the blowout this year in January. And the blowout happened the day before the prosecution agreement was up. Which I am very sorry those people had to go through that, and they were injured. However, they were not killed. And no one could blame the pilots for the side of the plane going out, right? And so that's very important because the Boeing always goes to blame the pilots, and the airlines always go to blame the pilots. So we are trying to get traction still. We have a meeting with the Department of Justice on April 24th, and then the final adjudication will be in June. And we are hoping that they pursue criminal action against Boeing, specifically the pervasive wrong behavior that is throughout the company, and make the executives accountable. Because you know that if any executive goes to jail, then executives are going to change their behavior. Yeah. So in addition to the work we did in Washington, I went to Illinois. Because at the time, Boeing had their headquarters in Chicago. And they had a crazy law in Illinois where you could get punitive damages for wrongful death by a corporation if they injured you, but not punitive damages via wrongful death, which is crazy, right? Because death is the ultimate injury. So I wanted to change the law because that would motivate Boeing to change their behavior in the production process. So they had taken out many inspections. So there's all these planes being churned out, which are now in service, where they had no inspections, very few inspections. And they took this model from Toyota. But the thing is, Toyota and cars are made by robots, and planes are made by humans, and they're put together by hand by humans. So you've got to have inspections. So anyway, there are many, many problems with these Boeing planes, and they keep coming out in pilot reports. So you guys have only seen the most egregious of them, but we see every day that at least once a month there is a major close death experience that passengers have. And that is due to the defects that the stabilizer trim motor just fails, okay? It's pretty important. If some of these things fail at a certain altitude, there's nothing you can do to save the plane. So we have been calling attention to this, and we didn't get any traction until the blowout. And when I went to Illinois, I was interviewed by the Berkshire Edge today, and he said, "What experience do you have?" I had no experience except going around Washington getting this legislation done. At the time, I didn't know Illinois. I didn't know how their legislature worked. I went there, I moved into a Motel 6. I went every day to the legislature. I went to every single office in the assembly. I explained myself. One legislator attacked me in the hall because I went to his district with QR codes. He had said, he was holding it up in committee, and he said, "This isn't of interest to my district." His district is right around the University of Chicago, very poor district. And I said, "It is interested. It is important to them. They have landlords. They have landlords that can cause injury and death, and sometimes do. They are concerned about having punitive damages. They do want this motivation for the company to behave well." And he's like, "No, I'm not passing out of committee." So I took the QR codes, which were directly to his, calling his office and emailing his office, and I spent 3 days, and I just walked around in the whipping wind. I mean, I couldn't even keep the QR code flat enough for people to take their picture. And immediately when they took the picture and they chose either call his office or email his office, it went immediately. And he got over 100 messages. And when he saw me on Tuesday, because I don't know if you know, but legislators only work Tuesday through Thursday, all over. That's what they work. So yeah, he saw me and he was furious. He was like, we need to get a restraining order against you. Don't come near me. What are you doing? You know, he was furious, right? Because he had gotten a list. And it was fantastic for me, although I felt like I was being attacked in this beautiful hallway, in this beautiful Capitol building in Illinois. But everybody wanted to know who I was after that. And it was like, what are you working on? What is it? What are you doing? You know, and are you all right? They're very nice people in Springfield. Are you all right? Are you all right? So that really taught me a lot. It taught me that you just need your heart, and you just need your common sense, and you just need to do the work. And most importantly, you need to choose an issue that is not divisive. Everyone agrees that we should have safe airplanes. Everybody, okay? And everybody agrees that if a corporation knowingly and maliciously goes against people, that they should have an incentive. Now, how does the incentive work? They can't get insurance for punitive damages. So for us, this doesn't apply to our case, but for us, they got insurance, right? So they never changed their ways. They just continued on with their bad manufacturing practices and everything. But to get punitive damages, which we got, August of 2023, an Illinois governor signed a change of the law. Now there is punitive damages for wrongful death in Illinois. So, I am able and willing to help you all regain control over your taxes and your destiny, because this situation with Boeing is just an example of what's happening. So everything you can think of, pharmaceuticals, every kind of safety issue you can think of, the fact that we care about having affordable housing, which is not being taken care of or supported by our national government. We care about having doctors. We have a shortage of doctors. We care about having manufacturing. And you know how many thousands of jobs have left this district because of the dumb trade agreements that Richard Neal has voted for? Thousands of jobs. For every job, for every money that he has brought, because that's what he thinks his job is. He said it. He said it on YouTube. You can look it up. He's like, the job of a representative in Congress is to bring money home to the district from the federal government. Well, it's a lot more than that. It's to do investigations. It's to call hearings. How do you guys think that fentanyl gets to homes in the United States, including in our district? It gets there through UPS and Federal Express. This is under Richard Neal's jurisdiction. He should be doing an investigation into this. He should be calling for hearings on this. But the reason he isn't is because he's busy. He's busy in his office, which is not on Capitol Hill, raising money. Because you can't raise money from your Capitol Hill office. So more than half of his time is spent off of Capitol Hill, not doing the work for the district, but rather getting a war chest to fight against us. Yeah, we're gonna win this campaign by being organized. People vote when you talk to them. That's the only reason that people cast a vote. Somebody told them out loud, consider this candidate. They looked at the candidate, they cared about the other person's opinion, and then they decide to vote for the candidate. That's the process of people voting. And there isn't any other process. Signs don't make a difference. Internet doesn't make a difference. That is the actual grassroots, scientifically proven way that people vote. And if they don't have that process happen, they just vote if they see a D or an R. If nobody talked to them, if nobody explained like who the candidate was, they didn't have time to do the research, they go in there and they're like, well, generally I'm a D or generally I'm an R, so probably this guy is good. And you know who did that? I did that. I did that for years with Richard Neal. So I understand that behavior. But we need, in order to take our destiny back, in order to take control over our tax dollars, we have to not do that. We have to organize and have in each municipality in this district, we have to have people talking about this campaign. Because this campaign is not about me. This campaign is about amplifying all of your voices. So one project we're doing is with Robert Ball, and what we're doing is he's taking 30-second interviews of people who tell what the most important issue for them is. So, for example, Tony Galata stopped by today, and he said, my insurance company is making me take a medicine that is not the medicine my doctor is prescribing, and it's making me sick. The person who should be determining my medicine is my doctor. And that totally makes sense. And he's being damaged from that. Okay, so every person here has something which is on their heart and which is hurting them or hurting someone they love. And we want to record all that. And it doesn't matter what I think about your issue. You need to have your voice amplified, and you need to have it heard. And if that's the only thing that is left from this campaign, it will be tremendous. So the issues that 80% of people care about are manufacturing, reshoring manufacturing to our country so that we are consuming goods. All of us are consuming goods all the time, right? And so we should be making a bunch of those goods. We should be making more of those goods. And then as far as environmental issues, that would be up to the municipality. Where the manufacturer, the new manufacturer applies, then the municipality would have to make sure that they complied with whatever consideration, environmental considerations. But we need on a federal level to not make these agreements, these trade agreements, which give away our sovereignty. And 80% of people agree with that, and so we can get it done. We need to have more medical doctors. Everybody agrees on that. Everyone can't find a medical doctor if they're new to the area, or they can't get an appointment with their medical doctor if they already have one. We need to have housing available. There's incredible work and pilot programs done on affordable housing, and we should take advantage of that. And the federal government should support the best ones. And then we need to do something about food prices. So I'm getting signatures in front of the grocery store, and people are coming out and they're totally in shock, and they're saying, I just can't manage. My wages are not going up. The food prices are going up. My bill here is like $400 for the week. You know, several years ago it was $200 for my family. And they can't handle that. So we need to have an investigation. Why is it that the food prices went up during COVID and they never went back down? What happened, right? That's the responsibility of our governing body. And then we have to have wealthy corporations paying their fair share of the taxes. So in 2017, the wealthy corporations got their tax cut. But we have a huge deficit. And this is just compounding our national debt, which is like jeopardizing our whole future. So that is something that everybody agrees about. Nobody wants to have that compounding national debt. And everyone thinks that wealthy corporations should pay their fair share of the debt. In addition, when you don't have enough taxes, when you don't pursue corporations that don't pay their taxes, I'm not talking about like increasing or anything, but they just don't pay, then when you don't pursue that, you lose services. services that people depend on. So I'm not taking any corporate donations, ever. And my focus is on addressing people's needs and identifying people's needs. And I don't know all the needs. I know the top ones because people tell me all the time. But it is the first time in history that our country that we are a net food importer. Okay, this is a farm. We produce hay and corn for a dairy. You know, the farmer gets a very small amount of the price, of the market price. The other people that get the larger share of the market price are the distributor and the store. So in Canada, they have a bottom for milk price. They have a price that you can't go below. And the reason for that is that our farmers can't stand these incredible dips and rises in the market. And so they can't tolerate that. And so then they go out of business, and you can't replenish that. You can't recreate that farm. That farm was there for 50 or 100 years and had all this infrastructure in place. And then when it goes down, just because of a market fluctuation, you can't fix it, right? And so the farm, we have to attend to that, and we have to get food security again. We can't be a net importer of food. Like, our country doesn't need to be like that. We can produce our own food. So I'm not a politician. I don't sound like a politician. I will work with whoever's in office. I will work on these issues. And there's practical considerations. And you guys are a core group of people who care because you've already read my website, you've already read some of my literature, you took the trouble to come here. And so I need 6 people to volunteer for Monday, March 18th, which is coming up. We have a town meeting in Sheffield. And a town meeting is a great time to get registered voter signatures. So what we would do is at the school, we'd fan out the 6 people with Sheffield voter sheets. And as they come in for the first half hour, we would get those signatures. And then after, when they're leaving, which is harder because they're leaving, like they're not like wanting to chit chat, right? They already did their chit chat, right? People come in early, but then when they come to leave, they leave quickly. But I think we could get a sizable number of signatures. And so please, if you are willing to stand there, you don't have to be a Sheffield resident or anything to do it. If you're willing to stand there with me, then let me know after I talk. And then we're going to have a weekly meeting on Zoom because we have to start building our volunteer base. And what we're going to do is identify people in the 80 municipalities in the district and start fanning out the contact, those conversations, those one-on-one conversations. That's how we're going to win this election. And we got to start making it happen. So we'll start having that weekly volunteer meeting on Zoom. And you can become involved in that to whatever level you want to. And then finally, I have to ask you for donations. So please, if you are at all inclined, give me a donation before you leave, or go to the website and give your donation electronically. If you give it to me in person, I need to know your occupation, your employer, and your address. And I have to report all that to the FEC. So I can't get into any kind of trouble with donations that I don't really know exactly where did it come from. So everything has to be organized, and I have to submit my first report by March 31st. So I am very grateful that you guys are standing up for democracy, and I think we can make a good effort. There's actually one thing that I want to add that is really important. So do you know who Dennis Kucinich is?
Yes. Yes.
All of you know. Okay. So he just divorced the Democratic Party in Ohio. And he has done several interviews about the power that an independent elected representative can have in a close house. So that person can have a huge amount of power to negotiate for their district, to negotiate what's, because the Republicans are going to want your vote for their things, the Democrats are going to want your vote for their things, and you can say, hey, I'm not giving you my vote unless you make sure that we have universal health care. You know, or you take a step in that direction, okay? Or you make sure that we have doctors. Let's just take that step. You can't have universal health care if you don't have any doctors, right? So let's just take a step in that direction. So I'm going to condition my vote for this or for that. And that's a very powerful position, and it is more powerful than what Richard Neal has right now. Okay, thank you guys very much.